Hello everyone, my name is Shawn Enverso, and today I'm going to be giving a summary and reflection of Jose Rizal's novel, El Filibusterismo. So to start, I'll just give some background. Jose Rizal's novel is set in the Philippines during the late 1800s, specifically during the Spanish colonial period. The story takes place several years after the events of Rizal's previous novel, Noli Me Tangere, and portrays the continuing struggles of the Filipino people under Spanish rule. The novel is primarily set in Manila, the capital city of the Philippines. Throughout the novel, Rizal vividly describes the social, economic, and political conditions of the Philippines during that time, portraying the injustices and abuses suffered by the Filipino people under Spanish colonialism. So, for a summary of the actual novel, El Filibusterismo, the novel centers around the protagonist Simon, a jeweler returning to the Philippines where he is able to freely move around. The story begins on a steamship sailing up the Passage River from Manila to La Laguna. For context, in Jose Rizal's previous novel, Simon was known as, bear with me as I try to pronounce it, Crisotomo Ibarra, who escaped from the pursuing soldiers at Laguna de Bay, dug up his buried treasure, and fled to Cuba, where he became rich and befriended many Spanish officials. 13 years after leaving the Philippines, Crisotomo Ibarra returned as Simon. Simon goes from town to town, presumably to sell his jewels. Reaching San Diego, he detours to a forested land once owned by the Ibarras to retrieve more of his treasures. There, his true identity as Crisotomo Ibarra is discovered by now grown Basilio, who was visiting his mother's grave. In the years since the death of his mother, Basilio had been serving as Captain Tiago's servant in exchange for being allowed to study, and is now an aspiring doctor on his last year at university, as well as an administrator and apparent heir to Captain Tiago's wealth. Simon reveals his motives to Basilio and offers him a place in his revolutionary plans. To secure his place in the world, Basilio declines. So basically, Simon is trying to create a revolution against the Spanish rule in the Philippines. In the town of Tiani, Simon stays at the house of the village's Caspang Tales. Having suffered misfortune and after misfortune in recent years, Casabang Tales is unable to resist the temptation to steal Simon's revolver and join the bandits. In Los Banos, Simon joins his friend, the Captain General, who is then taking a break from a hunting excursion. In a friendly game of cards with him and his cronies, Simon raises the stakes higher and higher, half-jokingly secures blank orders for deportation, imprisonment, and summary execution from the Captain General. Later on, Simon goes to Manila and meets Quiroga, a wealthy Chinese businessman, an aspiring consul general for the Chinese Empire. Knowing Quiroga is heavily in debt, Simon offers him a steep discount if he stores his massive arsenal of rifles in Quiroga's warehouse to be presumably for revolutionary activities with Manila's elite. Despite his hatred of guns and weaponry, Quiroga reluctantly agrees to do the job for Simon. And now that Simon has some weaponry and has talked to some of his buddies, some people, he wants to plan his rebellion. So months pass, and the night of Simon's revolution comes. Simon visits Basilio in Tiago's house and tries to convince him to join his revolution. He reveals his plan for attack. A cannon shot shall be fired. And now the bandit, identifying himself as Manta Glauan, who was Casabang Tales, and Simon, who managed to deceive who had a rogue force of troops against the government, will lead their forces into the city and basically attack against the elites. However, this first revolution fails after Basilio reports to Simone that Maria Clara died. So, more stuff happens in the book, and then basically Simone tries to organize a new revolution, and he once again reveals his plans to Basilio. This time, Simone wants to plan an attack during a wedding. It was a wedding between Juanito Palez and Polito Gomez, and they are prominent members of the Manila elite. Therefore, there will be prominent members of the civil government there at the wedding. That's why Simone wants to attack, including the captain general, as the guest of honor. So, for this attack, Simone wanted to deliver a pomegranate-shaped crystal lamp as a wedding gift. And then the lamp illuminates lights, but when the lights flicker, it will when someone tries to turn back on the lights, it will deliver a mechanism because the lamp is actually contained with mercury, and it is also containing nitroglycerin, which will kill everyone in an enormous blast. So this is Simone's big plan. He thinks it's gonna work. Everything's set up, but actually, what happens is Basilio warns someone, Izagani, about Simone's plan and the lamp, and Izagani was there, and to save somebody's life, Izagani goes and gets the lamp and throws it away. So thus, Simone's second revolution action failed. In the following days, Simone is pretty much exposed for what he's been trying to do, as he's obviously been trying to go against the Spanish elite. So a giant manhunt ensues, and Simone is chased as far away as the shores of the Pacific. He spends the rest of his days hiding in a mansion of Padre Florentino, a priest, who's also Izagani's uncle. And one day, a lieutenant informs Florentino that he received an order to arrest Simone. That night, in response, Simone drinks a slow-acting poison kept in his treasure chest. Simone makes his final confession to Florentino, revealing his true identity to Florentino as Cristomo Ibarra. The confession he makes is long. In the end, Florentino assures the dying man of God's mercy, but explains that the revolution failed because he had chosen means that God cannot sanction. So it's a long death. Crisostomo dies, and Florentino throws his chest containing his possessions and jewels into the sea because he didn't want the lieutenant that was coming to arrest him find it, saying that God will provide the means to draw them out, adding that they are better hidden at the bottom of the sea in the meantime where they cannot be found. So that was a little longer than I thought. But the major themes in the book are colonialism and oppression, social inequality, corruption, revolution, and religion. So for some comparisons, and we can further talk about the themes within these comparisons. I wanted to compare El Filibusterismo to the Marriage of Loti. So they both deal with themes of cultural clash, identity, and the search for personal freedom. In El Filibusterismo, Simone is like a Filipino who returns to his homeland to seek revenge against the Spanish colonial regime. He represents a strong struggle of the Filipino people for independence and freedom. Just kind of like in the Marriage of Loti, Loti is a French naval officer who travels to Tahiti and becomes fascinated with the local culture, eventually falling in love with a Tahitian woman and the Tahitian lifestyle. And he also was amazed by the sense of Rousseauism, and he represented a struggler of an outsider to find a sense of belonging in a foreign land. Both works feature characters who feel out of place in their own societies and seek to escape a new environment. In El Filibusterismo, Simon is disillusioned with the corruption and oppression he sees in Philippine society and seeks to spark a revolution. And in The Marriage of Loti, Loti is drawn to the exoticism and sensuality of Tahiti, which contrasts with the repressed and restrictive culture of France. So in Loti, he was always talking out against the French, which was his own culture, and just kind of like in El Filibusterismo, probably a little bit more violently, Simon was always talking against the French, obviously wanted a revolution against them. Thus, you can see some comparisons between the two. And they are both set in an environment that are unfamiliar and exotic to the main characters. The Philippines is depicted as a land of beauty, just like Tahiti. So that's like another small similarity between the two books. Differences is the cultural origins, the themes for personal freedom. Obviously, as I was trying to explain, Simone takes a much more violent approach into seeking a better life than Loti does. The narrative style is definitely different between the two books. Loti is in the first person, while El Filibusterismo is in the third person. And the political contexts are different because of the different times. So next, I want to talk about the comparison of the book to Hawaiian and Tahitian colonialism. So both El Filibusterismo and Hawaiian colonialism involve the exploitation of indigenous peoples by colonial powers. In the Philippines, the Spanish authorities were the colonial powers, while in Hawaii, it was the United States, and in Tahiti, it was the French colonial authorities. Both involve the imposition of foreign cultures and values on indigenous peoples. In the case of the Philippines, the Spanish authorities and the Catholic Church imposed their language, religion, and cultural practices on the native Filipinos. In Hawaii, the United States imposed their language, education system, and cultural practices on the native Hawaiians, and as well as just like the French imposed their language, religion, and cultural practices on the native Tahitians. All three involved a resistance and struggles of indigenous people against colonialism. In the Philippines, there were numerous rebellions, just like Simone's rebellions, and uprisings against the Spanish colonialism. While in Hawaii, there are various forms of resistance, such as protests, legal challenges, and calls for independence. However, the differences between these are the time periods. The Spanish colonial period in the Philippines lasted for more than 300 years, while Hawaiian colonialism in the United States began in 1898 and continues to the present day. And Tahiti began in 1842 and lasted for over 100 years until they gained their independence from the French. The methods for colonialism were also different. Spanish colonialism in the Philippines involved direct control and subjugation of the native population, while American colonialism in Hawaii involved indirect control through economic and political means. French colonialism in Tahiti involved direct control and subjugation of the native population. Finally, there's been different outcomes. As I said, colonialism is technically still alive in Hawaii, as it was illegally taking control through a joint venture. But fortunately for the Tahiti and the Philippines, the Philippines was able to. They eventually overthrew the Spanish colonial powers, and Tahiti was granted a measure of autonomy from the French eventually. However, the United States still maintains control over the Hawaiian Islands. So next, I want to talk about... Alright, so next, I want to make a comparison between Simone and Captain James Cook. As we learned earlier, Captain Cook was a British explorer who went to the Hawaiian Islands to encounter a new culture. Um, and I thought to really compare these guys, not just because they both died on like a separate visit, but interesting comparison is that they are both seen as outsiders in the societies that they operate in. Captain Cook was a British explorer who was navigating unfamiliar waters and encountering new cultures, while Simone is a man who has adopted a false identity in order to operate in secret and achieve his revolutionary goals. Both Simone and Captain Cook represented power and authority in their respective societies. They both had a strong will to achieve their goals, as we saw with Simone and his revolutions, and Captain Cook, who continually came back to the Hawaiian Islands to learn more. Unfortunately, they both fell to their demise. They both ended up dying in a state of betrayal, as Captain James Cook was unaware that what he was doing was wrong by coming at the wrong time of year. Thus, he was killed. And Simone was killed in a country that he was prideful for and just wanted to get rid of the Spanish colonial ills that influence his nation. They are very different characters, but they both had strong will to achieve their goals, and yeah, they're both very influential, and both seen as idols in their respective societies. So, for my conclusion and personal thoughts, the main message of the novel is a critique on Spanish colonial regime in the Philippines. It exposes injustices and abuses of power by the Spanish authorities and highlights the social and political conditions of the Philippines during the colonial period. It explores various themes such as colonial oppression, social inequality, and cultural identity, and employs various literary techniques such as satire, irony, and symbolism to convey its message. The novel ultimately calls for social and political reform and greater awareness and action of the part of the Filipino people to work on their own liberation from colonial oppression. My personal thoughts is I really enjoyed this book. This is my favorite by far of the 5 we've read so far. I thought it was a very powerful critique of colonialism. It was way more violent, in a sense, on how to approach colonialism, as Simone was always trying to rebel. I thought it was a really good critique on colonialism and oppression in general. I think it's very like culturally significant as well. I thought it was very well written. As I just said, it had various literary techniques. As myself, I really appreciate literature as an art form and enjoy the novel for its literary value and aesthetic qualities. And finally, I think it's really good that this book made some noise and is still implemented today in Philippine society. It is required to read there. And I think this is also a great novel for readers who are interested in these kind of issues and appreciate the novel for its relevance to contemporary social and political contexts, as it can still be applied today